The branches of Sherwood Forest swayed under the weight of the wind, whispering secrets to those who dared listen. Beneath the towering oaks and thick underbrush, Robin Hood crouched, his sharp eyes scanning the road ahead. The clanking of armored hooves against the dirt signaled the approach of another convoy, a nobleman's treasury being transported under heavy guard. Another fat purse headed straight for Nottingham's coffers. Will Scarlet muttered beside him. Robin smirked. Not if we have anything to say about it. Little John tightened his grip on his quarterstaff. Same plan as before? Robin nodded. Swift and clean. No bloodshed unless necessary. He turned to the rest of his band positioned among the trees. Positions, everyone. When the time is right, strike. The convoy approached. At its center, a black carriage trimmed with gold escorted by knights on horseback. The lead guard, clad in polished chainmail, held up a hand signaling a halt. Something feels off, he muttered. Before he could react, an arrow embedded itself in the ground just inches from his horse's hooves. Ambushed! Another knight shouted, but it was too late. From the trees, Robin's men swung down on ropes, landing amidst the guards with swift precision. Will Scarlet disarmed a knight with a flick of his dagger, while Little John's quarterstaff sent another crashing to the ground. Robin himself landed atop the carriage, kicking the driver aside. He tore open the door to find the nobleman trembling inside, clutching a satchel of gold. Come now, Robin said with an easy grin. You can't possibly need all this. The nobleman's face flushed red. Thief! Scoundrel! Robin plucked the satchel from his hands. Wrong. Just a redistribution specialist. As the battle concluded, the outlaws gathered the stolen gold, distributing it to the grateful villagers who had gathered. From the shadows, however, unseen eyes watched. A cloaked figure turned and hurried back toward Nottingham. Sheriff of Nottingham slammed his goblet onto the wooden table, wine spilling onto his robes. Again! That insufferable outlaw humiliates me again! Sir Guy of Gisborne, the sheriff's ruthless enforcer, knelt before him. We've increased patrols, my lord, but Robin Hood is elusive. He moves like a shadow in that cursed forest. Prince John, lounging in a velvet chair, chuckled. You mean to tell me that a band of peasants outwits the mighty Sheriff of Nottingham? The sheriff gritted his teeth. Give me time, your highness. I will deliver Robin Hood's head to you. Prince John waved a hand. Then do it. I want his head mounted on the castle walls. Sir Guy stood, his eyes cold. We have a new plan. The sheriff leaned forward. I'm listening. Sir Guy smirked. Bait. The sheriff's men spread word across Nottingham. A vast sum of gold, enough to feed 100 families, was being transported through the forest in secret. The villagers spoke of it in hushed voices, but Robin Hood heard their whispers. It's a trap, Will Scarlet warned. Robin smiled. Of course it is. Little John crossed his arms. And yet you still plan to spring it? Robin's grin widened. Naturally, as night fell, the outlaws moved through the trees, silent as the wind. The convoy waited below, torches flickering against the darkness, but something felt off. Robin held up a hand, signaling his men to halt. He listened. No sound of birds, no rustling of nocturnal creatures, just silence. A crossbow bolt whizzed past his head. Ambush! Armed soldiers erupted from the trees, swords flashing in the firelight. Robin barely had time to draw his blade before Sir Guy of Gisborne was upon him, striking with deadly precision. Blades clashed. Robin ducked, twisted, countered, but Sir Guy was relentless. His men fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. One by one, they fell. Robin turned just in time to see Little John struck down, bound in chains. A sharp pain exploded at the back of his head. The world spun. Then darkness. Robin awoke in a damp dungeon, the air thick with mold. Chains bound his wrists, the iron biting into his skin. Across from him, Little John and Will Scarlet sat bruised but alive. Finally awake, a voice sneered. The sheriff stood beyond the bars, smirking. You've been quite the nuisance, Robin Hood, but it ends now. Robin leaned back against the wall. I take it Prince John is throwing a party in my honor? The sheriff chuckled. Indeed. A public execution. The people will watch as their so-called hero hangs. Robin glanced at his men. Their expressions were grim but defiant. The sheriff turned to leave. Tomorrow, Robin Hood dies. Morning came. The gallows loomed in the castle courtyard. An eager crowd gathered to witness the execution. Robin stood between two guards, hands bound, his fate seemingly sealed. The sheriff stepped forward, addressing the crowd. "Behold the outlaw who dared defy the crown! Let this be a lesson to all who challenge authority." A drumroll began. The executioner tightened the noose. Robin's eyes scanned the crowd. He spotted movement on the rooftops, then chaos. Arrows rained from above. The outlaws had arrived. Little John broke free of his captors, bashing soldiers aside. Will Scarlet tossed Robin a dagger, and in one swift motion he cut his bonds. The sheriff shouted orders, but it was too late. Robin and his men vanished into the city streets, disappearing into the night. Days passed. The sheriff's men scoured every corner of Nottingham, but Robin Hood was gone. Prince John seethed. He will return. And he did. The people whispered his name in the shadows. Songs were sung of his deeds. The legend of Robin Hood lived on. For as long as tyranny existed, so too would the outlaw hero of Sherwood. The forests of Sherwood had always been a safe haven for Robin Hood and his band of outlaws, but this time was different. The Sheriff of Nottingham had suffered humiliation after Robin's escape, and he was not a man to forget. "We must strike back," Will Scarlet urged, as they gathered around the campfire. "The sheriff will not stop hunting us." Robin Hood remained calm, his sharp gaze fixed on the flickering flames. "We will not run, nor will we hide. If the sheriff seeks to tighten his grip on Nottingham, we must loosen it." Little John grinned. "And how do we do that?" Robin smirked. "By taking from him what he values most, his control." The plan was set. The sheriff's strongholds, where he hoarded gold stolen from the people, would be raided one by one. Over the next weeks, Robin and his men struck under the cover of night. Guards were subdued, chests of gold were seized, and the people of Nottingham rejoiced as Robin Hood returned their stolen wealth. With every attack, the sheriff's fury grew. "Enough!" he roared, overturning a table in his chambers. "If I cannot defeat Robin Hood through force, I will use deception." And so a new scheme was set in motion. Word spread that an ally had betrayed Robin Hood. A message reached the outlaws claiming that a noblewoman of Nottingham, Lady Marian, was to be married off to a cruel lord as punishment for sympathizing with Robin's cause. Robin's heart tightened. Marian. She had been his dearest friend since childhood, the only noble who truly cared for the people. "This is a trap," Will Scarlet warned. Robin nodded. "I know." Little John crossed his arms. "And yet you're going anyway?" Robin met his gaze. "Of course." The plan was set. Under the guise of a masked noble, Robin entered Nottingham Castle during a grand feast, slipping through the halls unseen. In a candlelit chamber, he found Marian standing by a window gazing at the stars. She turned, gasping. "Robin?" He rushed to her. "Come, we don't have much time." But before they could move, the doors burst open. Guards flooded the room, swords drawn. The sheriff entered last, smiling triumphantly. "Did you truly think I would let you escape so easily?" Robin and Marian were dragged before Prince John, who lounged lazily on his throne. "You've caused quite a bit of trouble," the prince mused. "But all legends must come to an end," the sheriff grinned. "This time there will be no escape." Robin met Marian's gaze, then Will Scarlet's, who had been captured as well. His men were outside the castle walls, waiting, but time was running out. Prince John leaned forward. "I propose a deal. Surrender Robin Hood, and I will spare Marian's life." Silence fell over the hall. Robin took a slow breath. His fate was sealed, but Marian's life meant more to him than his own. "I accept." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The sheriff smirked, pleased with his victory, but Marian stepped forward. "No," Prince John frowned. "Excuse me?" Marian lifted her chin. "Robin Hood is more than a man. He is a symbol, and you cannot kill a symbol." A loud crash echoed through the hall. The doors burst open. Robin's men stormed in, weapons raised. The people of Nottingham had risen in rebellion, storming the castle in defiance. The battle raged. Robin, freed from his captors, faced the sheriff in a final duel. Blades clashed, sparks flying. The sheriff lunged, Robin sidestepped, striking with a swift counter. The sheriff staggered back, defeated. Prince John fled as his soldiers were overwhelmed. With the sheriff deposed and the prince in exile, Nottingham was free. The people cheered as Robin Hood and his band stood atop the castle walls, victorious. Marian took Robin's hand. "You have given the people hope. Robin smiled. Hope is the greatest treasure of all. As the sun rose over Sherwood, Robin Hood turned to his men. The fight is never truly over. As long as injustice exists, we will stand against it. And so the legend of Robin Hood lived on, whispered in the wind, carried in the hearts of those who longed for freedom. For heroes may fade, but legends never die.